High above Newport on the Isle of Wight stands Carisbrooke Castle, which for 1,000 years has played a vital role in the defence of Britain. This is the moment a castle was built for. To guard, protect, control and defend. Whoa! So, the Anglo-Saxons built here, although all that's left of their stronghold is this curtain wall you can see just through the grass here. The Anglo-Saxons ruled the country. There was Alfred the Great, Ethelred the Unready, and then we move into the Danish kings with Viking blood in their veins, Canute and Harefoot and Edward the Confessor. And then there's Harold in 1066.
King Harold mustered his forces on the Isle of Wight, expecting attack, but trouble broke out in northern England. Too late, he came back south to Hastings. His men were tired and ill-equipped for battle with invaders, and he lost.
So there we are. William the Conqueror is king. Now, William is from France, Normandy, and he needs a good, solid power base, show the population who's boss, you know. William's good friend, Fitz Osborne, becomes the first Norman lord of the Isle of Wight. He decides on this Saxon burh for its high position and its commanding view over the population. A power base, a fortress, a fitting home for a noble lord, his family and his followers.
The first structures were probably earth and wood like this. A steep bank, a motte crowned by a timber keep, with a dry moat all round. Next lord of the island, Richard de Redvers, replaces the timber parts with local limestone from Quor on the north side of the island. The castle took about 9 years to rebuild. Like any grand design, you need plans, and a master mason took charge of the building work. It's 1101. By the time the castle is listed in King William's Domesday Book, an inventory of all his kingdom, it's a castle of stone.
We're here to find out about the medieval defences of the castle, with the help of this good woman. Ah, Goody Glover. Could you tell us about the medieval defences of this castle?
Oh, pull down the portcullis. They won't get through that. And any man who did, look up there. You could pour boiling oil down on their heads. And shooting, we had every line of fire planned. Our men, they had every way covered.
And there we are. In those days, of course, there were no bulldozers or power tools, just men with muscle. Freemasons cut and carved the stone, and rough masons built these stone walls here, made extra strong with the cavities filled with flint and mortar and rubble. Put your back into it, come on. Everything was built with wooden scaffolds, held in place by these putlug holes. Put, log, hole. Richard de Redvers does all this building so that Carisbrooke will be a formidable castle for his son Baldwin to inherit. There were three things you could do in those days to earn a living. You could be a soldier, a priest, or a common working man. If you were a king, however, you'd got it made. You were the most powerful man in the land. Everyone had to obey you. You allowed nobles, people with money and power, to own lands as long as they fought your enemies for you. These nobles or lords, in turn, give land to knights to help them fight their enemies. So, land is payment for loyalty and service. Baldwin de Redvers is Lord of the Isle of Wight in 1136, and the King and Queen are fighting each other. The Queen's forces are raised over there in France, and the King's here in England. If you're a powerful lord with many old family ties in Normandy, and you support the English king, and the Queen wins the war, then you can kiss goodbye to all your French lands. However, if you decide to support the Queen and the king wins, then the king's gonna hate you and you can lose all your English lands. So who do you fight for? Carisbrooke Castle! Poor old Baldwin de Redvers. He decides to fight for the Queen, and she's defeated. I mean, he's quite safe within his castle walls, but in drought conditions, the well went dry, and he was forced to surrender to the King at Southampton. Queen Matilda and her French forces did eventually win the war. She deposed the king and ruled briefly herself, and the son from her second marriage became Henry II.
And his sons were Richard the Lionheart, who went off to fight in Palestine in the Crusades, and King John, who dropped the crown jewels somewhere and was forced by the powerful land-owning barons to sign Magna Carta, the very first statement of our civil liberties.
This is a really remarkable woman because she lived in the reigns of Henry III and Edward I in the 13th century, and she was, at that time, through various circumstances, the richest woman in the kingdom. She was born into a very noble family, the Earls of Devon, and when she was about 12, she was married, as girls were at that time, to a nobleman in the north of England who lived in the Holderness area. His manor was at Burstwick. Actually, she was a very good wife because she produced 5 children quite quickly, including an heir, which is the important thing. Unfortunately, her husband died, while they were visiting in France, And so at the age of 23, she became a widow. Now, she immediately inherited, by law, 1/3 of this huge estate, which stretched from Burstwick right through to Cockermouth on the other coast. Then there was another family tragedy because her brother, the Earl of Devon, died when he was visiting with Henry III at a great feast in Paris in the middle of the summer. He died, I think, from food poisoning.
Not just gluttony.
No, because it was the middle of the summer, very hot, big feast, and he wasn't the only person who was taken ill or died. So I think he died from food poisoning. Anyway, that made her at once, there was no one else. She then became the Countess of Devon. So she then had huge estates in Devon, but she also inherited the Isle of Wight. And she decided that she would make Carisbrooke Castle the centre of her entire estate, actually, the north and the south and the west. And she came here, and what she did was to transform the castle from a soldier's headquarters into a beautiful home for a really great lady to live in. So she really changed the whole look of the castle.
A formidable woman. Yeah.
She was. I don't think she was particularly nice. I don't think that describes her at all. But she was a really formidable woman. And the fact that she remained, A, a widow for the whole of her life, which is very unusual, especially for a rich widow, and B, that she kept the Isle of Wight for the whole of her life, is a real testimony to her strength of character.
Yeah, so she was almost like the queen of the Isle of Wight.
She was very formidable indeed.
Well, here we are. This is the window of Countess Isabella's high chamber, built right up against the north wall. The view is really stunning, isn't it?
You can see all the way over to Cowes and Southampton and, well, I imagine this tree wasn't
there. You look down towards Newtown. It's it gives you a very good idea of what a good site this was for a castle.
Well, exactly, a commanding view.
Absolutely,
yes. Yeah.
The end of her life is very carefully documented, actually. A message was sent to the king that she was dying, and he sent 2 of his senior officials, 2 bishops, and the charter of sale for the Isle of Wight was drawn up, and she asked one of her ladies, a very long-standing companion, to seal the charter with her own seal because she was unable to do it. And this was done. And then to show that she knew what she was doing, she took from one of the bishops one of his beautiful gloves, very elaborate gloves they wore, and she took it into her own hand. Now, life then was very symbolic, and everybody knew then that she knew what she was doing. The whole thing had been settled, and the Isle of Wight sale had been completed.
Should we walk up here?
Yes. And at one time, well, I was the church warden here, actually. I think the youngest in the country when that happened.
So quite a lot happens over the next century, though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
The 100 Years' War, the French constantly attacking, and of course the Black Death.
Yes, the Black Death really devastated the country because nothing like it had been known before.
No.
Nobody could do anything about it.
No,
really dreadful.
Like 1/3 of the population lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It changed the country completely. Yes.
John, can I ask you, 1327, Edward III's on the throne and there are new ways of fighting.
Yeah. Well, obviously the major change is the invention of gunpowder, which revolutionises the way that wars are fought and castles like this are defended.
So this is Carisbrooke's very own gunpowder store.
That's right, the gunpowder would be kept down here underground for safety.
I see, and well, you can imagine what would happen if it went sky high, blew up.
Well, it certainly was dangerous, and there was a case of an explosion that killed 2 of the governor's children.
Oh, goodness. And was that in Carisbrooke?
No,
or-
that was at the governor's house at Appledurk.
Ah, I see, yeah. But of a similar sort of period to when we're talking.
That's right, the 16th century.
Yeah, yeah. Well, perhaps we should move away from here before we explode.
Well, under Edward, the Houses of Parliament developed, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and English replaces French as the official language.
And Edward assumes the role of King of France.
Yes, but the French don't agree.
Funny that. Oh, John, when was it that the towers were raised up?
These are actually a century later. You can see the loopholes where the first handguns were used. But when the French invade the island and lay siege to this castle in 1377, it's a single crossbowman who saves the castle.
Yeah.
This one here is Type 10 Bodkin. It's very large, armour piercing. As you can see, the difference between the broadhead and the armour piercing, because the broadhead on plate armour would bounce off, but this piece of work would go straight through plate armour. With in the region of 4,000 to 5,000 archers, all loosing their arrows at the same time. The French described it as a snowstorm, because they could see the white of the feathers, and the sky went dark, and with the white it was like snow, and so many arrows in the air at the same time.
If you were shooting or besieging the castle, for example at Carisbrooke, you would have had to be within the maximum or assumed maximum range of somewhere around 300 yards. And firing upwards onto the ramparts would bring you even closer in to within sort of 200 yards. Some of the wood was English yew, most of it, or a lot of it, would have come from the continent, from Italy and Spain mainly. There was a tariff on imports to this country of wine and silks, and usually that was paid in bow staves. So for every cask of wine that was brought into the country, they'd also have to bring a certain number of bow staves made of finest Spanish or Italian yew. They were the first weapons of mass destruction.
In 1377, King Edward III dies. His grandson, Richard II, becomes king at just 10 years old. The French see their chance. A French force lands on the north coast of the island. A massive invasion which overwhelms the island's strong defences. Yarmouth, Newtown and Newport are captured, looted and burned.
They've stopped attacking, but now they're laying siege to the castle. Hours, days of just waiting. But now we're running short of food. Peter de Hainaut. He's the best bowman we've got, and our last chance. The French commander, he comes up to the castle every morning, walking round, checking it out. He looks up, Peter says, like we're rats in a cage. He's here now. He's killed him! He's killed the French commander! Oh, Peter, well done, old boy! I don't believe... Look at the French are just running away! Look at them go, all the way over the downs! Oh, Peter, you're our hero. See, the French have ransacked and burnt Yarmouth, Newtown and Newport. But not here. Peter de Hainaut has saved us. You're our hero. Let's have a party! Fancy a jug or Sure, there's some maidens down there. Perhaps we could go down there. I'll carry your bow for you if you like. Yeah, we'll carry this one. After you, sir. Go on. Yeah, let's hear it for Peter. Oh, one of those for me.
There you are.
Cheers, guys. There you are. You know your mates are. But history moves on. Our 10-year-old king loses his crown to his uncle, John of Gaunt, who becomes Henry IV. And then there's Henry V, who wins us the French crown.
Once more unto the breach, dear friends. Once more. Follow thy spirit, and upon this charge, cry God for Harry, England, and Sir George! Hey! Hey!
Henry's son, Henry VI, loses France. Now, 100 years later, Henry VIII is on the throne, and he needs to keep the island fortified because he's at war with France, Spain, as well as Scotland.
And Henry has another problem. The church is rich and powerful, and he wants a divorce so he can marry his new love, Anne Boleyn. Henry ends the authority of the Pope, creates the Church of England, and dissolves all the Catholic monasteries.
So, when Henry VIII died, we know who succeeded through all that succession trauma, don't we?
Sirs, I present unto you Queen Elizabeth, your undoubted queen. Wherefore all you are come this day to do homage and service.
The first Elizabethan age. A great time, as long as you weren't a Catholic. Shakespeare's writing his plays, America is discovered, the coffers are full, and the Church of England becomes very strong. The Virgin Queen is very popular amongst her subjects. She's lovely. John, what is a siege?
Well, a siege is a technical word of the capture of a castle or a fortified city. So it's when an enemy army or an invading army tries to take hold of a castle like this. It's not an easy process, so usually it involves camping around the fortifications, depriving the people inside of water and food, and hopefully they'll surrender, if necessary, actually attacking and trying to break in.
Right, and is that the same over the centuries? You know, is it just the tried and tested method, or did it develop? Or
Well, it
change?
develops a lot. I mean, in the long history of the castle, you can see from our castle walls the two striking changes or different phases. The Norman castle, that wall up there, is from the 12th century, the century after the Norman conquest. And that is a fantastic defence of that period. And as you can see, it really makes it very difficult to get close to that wall with any kind of wooden siege engines, because they used to build towers in which they would be protected from the archers along the tops of the walls and approach with the towers in order to break the walls down. See, that wouldn't be possible with that angle of the hill. And the only way you could really attack that would be with ladders and men, and it would be extremely difficult. Queen Elizabeth appoints her own cousin, Sir George Carey, as the new captain of Wight, captain of the island, and he starts to make a big programme of rebuilding in the castle. This stone is beautifully faced, and no one had houses built of stone before 1600, about the same time, about the time this was built. So only churches and castles had stone at that time. there's so much stone being used in these new walls, it must have been imported.
Not from Quor.
And I think Quor, the big quarry, which was Quor was named after Breen, pretty much worked out by that time.
So would these be full of water, these moats?
Now all the moats around the castle, they're all dry, but they're well deep enough to stop an invading force attacking the castle walls.
Surely water would be better as a defence.
Now a chalk absorbs water. That's why the well is 160 feet deep, is because you've got to go right the way down underneath the chalk before you can get to the water.
I see, right.
But you can see for yourself, it makes quite a good barrier to stop a sudden rush of attackers carrying ladders for the castle walls. They'd have a hell of a job getting up and down these moats. And there's two here, isn't there?
Oh, I see, right. So they'd run down here, run up here, and all the time they're getting a volley of arrows
and crossbow bolts,
cannon
stones.
fire and things.
Make it look so easy now. Sorry, I've
Imagine-
abandoned you.
Imagine climbing up here with 50 pounds of chainmail on and a heavy, great broadsword, and you still haven't even met your enemy yet.
That's right, it was certainly... Oh!
Your Majesty, most gracious Queen Elizabeth, the number of lodgings is very small for my household. Only 2 lodgings with chimneys, others in need of windows, and altogether without light, unsealed, and without glass. Yet it's necessary to add some more lodgings and building to old walls, to add more room for myself and me family.
And so, Sir George Carey, he builds a fine new mansion for himself and his family.
"400 years after Baldwin, this new well house is built.
And it was mainly prisoners, poor prisoners, who worked it.
It probably was men who drove the treadmill of the well. In medieval times, this castle was the island's prison. And they would have brought that water up, full buckets of water, 161 feet from the water table below.
It was 200 years on before donkeys took on the task.
Elizabeth I's primary interest in the Isle of Wight was, of course, defence. Her naval forces are amassing over there in Portsmouth. Spain's armada is a powerful force, and the worry is that they will take the Isle of Wight and use it as a military base for operations against England.
The Navy engages the Spanish fleet, forces it past the Isle of Wight and along the Channel. Later their ships are dispersed with small fireboats, brought out into battle and thoroughly defeated. The Queen's Navy wins the day. The Spanish king thinks and plans, they say, but the Queen of England acts, and acts in earnest.
The Queen, she pays for more fortifications around this castle, designed by Gianni Belli, a most famous Italian engineering man. Work starts in 1597. Poor materials, wrong thinking, miscalculations, poor management, and it all grinds to a halt a year before our Virgin Queen Elizabeth dies.
Actually, it was a massive undertaking, using forced local labour, local population, and it took place at huge cost. But it did bring Carisbrooke up to date with the latest European fortresses. With sufficient garrison, the castle was again impregnable. The building work was completed in the year before the Queen died.
God and my right. Only God can remove me. Government comes directly from God, and kings are only accountable to God. Well, that's what James I thought anyway, wasn't it? Ordinary citizens have no rights.
But this time also sees the founding of the first colony in America. In 1607, a convoy of ships sailed from Cowes, and they just go to set up a place called Jamestown in Virginia, the very first colony. And Isle of Wight people are involved in that as well. And that's 13 years before the creation of the important colony, or famous colony in New England, by the Pilgrim Fathers.
Yeah, the divine right, though, includes touch. I mean, miraculous healing powers that James was quite happy to do, but, I mean, there's no actual evidence of, well, him healing anyone, is there?
No, I shouldn't think so, no, but I think people would remember James's time better for the beautiful King James Bible that was commissioned during his reign. But really it was an unfortunate reign. I mean, the finances were poor, Parliament lost faith in his policies and put more and more restrictions on the grants that they made, and generally the public became dissatisfied with his religious and his foreign policy, which really laid the foundations of political revolution.
And now there's the gunpowder plot. A group of Catholic gentlemen trying to blow up the king on the day of the state opening of Parliament. Guy Fawkes, a Yorkshireman, is caught in the cellars with 36 barrels of gunpowder. All the conspirators, including Fawkes, are tried by special commission and executed.
They do say old Guy Fawkes is the only man to enter the Houses of Parliament with honest intent.
Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot!
Oi!
King James I's son Henry died, so it is Charles, the second son, that accedes to the throne. Like his father, Charles believes in the divine right of kings. He's God's representative on earth.
I am God's true representative on earth. Today, I have dissolved my parliament. I cannot have such disagreement. I will rule myself. The Scots have risen up against me. They will not accept that the English worship is the only true way. God knows I am right, but they will not accept it. Costs me dear. With the Irish rebellion in Ulster, I have no choice but to recall Parliament and request funds. They want conditions set. They say they will trade money for power. They say I'm not at liberty to do what I wish, that I am bound to do as they say. I am the king, and God's king too. I took men and stormed the House of Commons, but the ringleaders were gone, and I myself was forced to flee London. A civil war has broken out between my loyal troops and Oliver Cromwell's army. At first, my royalists were successful, but Cromwell's new model army has proved stronger. I thought to surrender to the Scots, but they gave me over to Cromwell. At Hampton Court I was a virtual prisoner. So I've taken refuge here, at the castle at Carisbrooke. I have made a secret treaty with the Scots, but I am bitterly betrayed. More fighting has broken out around the country, and now this castle is a prison. There are guards on the gates, and I have escorts for my daily exercise along the ramparts.
Don't let him escape.
They've moved me to a more secure bedroom. Tonight, I'll try again. The bars on the window will be cut through and the 3 guards below bribed. At the last moment, 2 of those guards below betrayed me. The least of my subjects has the right not to be locked up without trial. It's written in Magna Carta. But I am held. September 1648. I'm taken to Newport and then to Hurst Castle. The Solent sea and sky are very blue, but there's none to be seen from my cell. The morning of my execution is cold. I have on me 2 shirts. I will not let my people see that I shiver because I'm afraid. I go to my God in all sovereign dignity, in full expectation of the life to come. God save the King!
We're standing in front of the memorial of the youngest daughter of Charles I. There's a memorial here because she died in Carisbrooke Castle, where her father had once been imprisoned. She's only 14 years old, and you shouldn't be fooled by that, because we have here an extremely intelligent young woman, highly articulate. She was a multilinguist. She could read and speak 5 languages, and she wrote a number of letters on behalf of the family to Oliver Cromwell. And at one point, before they came to Carisbrooke, she may well have been involved in attempts to try and get her brothers spirited away to the mainland of Europe. The conditions of their imprisonment in Carisbrooke were far from ideal. They were not exactly starved, but they were on pretty thin rations. It was cold, it was damp, and sadly, her health being so poor, she died. What makes it unusual from this church's point of view is this is the only member of the royal family to be buried in an English parish church. When Queen Victoria first came to the island, about 200 years after the death of the princess, she was determined to see that this young lady, this remarkable young lady, had a fitting memorial. So Queen Victoria and her ever clever husband, Albert, knew the artist Barachetti, and they commissioned and paid for this rather wonderful memorial. Her head is depicted as lying on an open book. The book actually is her father's Bible. And the Bible is open at the words from Matthew's Gospel. Come unto me, all you that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Cromwell and his army are the new power. Cromwell becomes Lord Protector with all the authority of a king. He crushes royalist support in Scotland and Ireland and takes revenge on Irish Catholics for massacres of Ulster Protestants.
Society had changed, and ordinary British people were scared. Now, Charles might not have been a wise king, but centuries of royal tradition had simply been blown apart, and Europe was shocked.
Theatres were banned, all celebrations, and Christmas pudding, summer dancing, maypoles, and there be fines for not attending church. All our old churches were ransacked and all their treasures burnt. Puritan worship, it was plain and simple.
Long live the King! Long live the King!
In 1660, the new king is Charles II. He has 3 children, but are all stillborn. He has 17 illegitimate children by other women. Charles, his period sees a much more reactionary time. You know, the recreation of the idea of the healing touch and the whole cult of a divine right of kings.
Well, he also presides over the revival of the theatres, though, and the founding of the Royal Society.
Absolutely, yes, but really his reign is one of disasters. When you think of the Dutch Wars, the Great Plague of 1665, and then the Great Fire of London of 1666. But his real problem is the succession. He's forced to promote his own younger Catholic brother as the next king.
James II was married twice, the second time to a Catholic. Now, if there was an heir from this marriage, then that would mean there'd be a Roman Catholic on the English Protestant throne. And people didn't like it. So after 3 years, he was deposed. He fled from London, but he managed to lose the great English seal in the River Thames. They offered his crown to his eldest daughter, Mary, and also to her husband, the Dutch King, William of Orange. Very good. So, new King and Queen, and Carisbrooke is set for renovation again.
The royal line gets difficult around this time. When the reign of William and Mary ends, Mary's younger sister, Anne, inherits the crown. The Act of Union between England and Scotland in 1707 makes Anne Queen of the United Kingdom. None of her 18 children survive, so a settlement is made that the crown will pass to her grandniece, Sophia of Hanover. Sophia dies before Anne, so Sophia's son, George, inherits.
Complicated. So, Sophia's son George, am I right in thinking he doesn't have a very good handle on the English language?
No, not at all. He doesn't speak any English. He speaks German, of course, and he speaks French with his ministers. So over this time, real power transfers to the Prime Minister.
And who was the Prime Minister around that time?
It was Sir Robert Walpole. He comes to power in 1720 with the big stock market crash of that year, and he's still in power in 1727 when George's son, George II, comes to the throne. Boom! And he's the last king to lead his troops into action in a battle in 1743 against the French in the War of the Austrian Succession.
I see. The future British Empire is taking shape. Successful agriculture and foreign trade investment capital really feeds into the industrial development of the country. City trader stuff, this. The first turnpikes are introduced, road charging, and the first road system since the Romans.
Here at the castle, the medieval chapel is replaced in a modern style by Lord Lymington.
In Scotland, James II's grandson lays claim to the throne. His supporters, though, are massacred in Culloden by government forces, and Bonnie Prince Charlie disappears into legend.
Meanwhile, down here in England, the crown jumps a generation to the son of the Prince of Wales and his wife Augusta, daughter of the Duke of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha.
A lot happens in our George III's time. He loses his new colonies in America. Well, they fight. They claim their independence.
Australia's discovered, though, and the first fleet set out past the Isle of Wight on their way to the new colony.
And all the great fleets sailing out call into Braden Harbour for our sweet fresh island water. Oh, renowned for it we are, and the flour from our mills, oh, and our livestock for to kill and eat on board the sailing ships.
Just across the channel, there's revolution in France and new threats of a Spanish invasion. But our great hero, Nelson, destroys their combined fleets in the Battle of Trafalgar.
George III is ill, some say mad, so his son George becomes regent in 1811. Now George is a bit of a lad, high-living, fast-loving, that sort of thing. In the end he has to get married to pay off his debts. His only daughter dies during childbirth, and so there's no legitimate heir. His brothers are encouraged to settle down and start to produce a legitimate heir themselves.
William, the second son, he's already has got large family by some actress and Mrs. Jordan. Well, he turns over a new leaf for the money and marries a German princess, Adelaide. They have 4 children, but not one of those poor little mites survives.
The Duke of Kent, the 4th son of George III, well, he's deeply in debt, and he leaves his long-term mistress in Brussels, and he marries Victoria Saxe-Coburg. In the spring of 1819, she's heavily pregnant, so he insists that she comes back to this country to have the child on English soil.
1819. Their daughter is born in Kensington Palace. Just 8 months later, her father, the Duke of Kent, dies. But, just as a fortune teller once told him, his daughter will be a great queen.
(1820). George IV, the Prince Regent, is king. George himself marries his mistress illegally and carries on with his spend ways.
William IV succeeds his brother, though his own health is uncertain. 1837. After the difficulties, ill health and high living of the kings of Hanover, excess is about to become purity. In Kensington Palace, the 18-year-old Victoria is woken to be told she is queen. Victoria's long reign was a time of invention and expansion of the empire. At its peak, the empire included 1/5 of the world's land surface and 1/4 of its population. At home, the Industrial Revolution generated more wealth and advantage and world authority than Britain had ever known.
Yeah, did you see them jumping? Yeah. It's very clever. It's because the picture stays on your eye just for a fraction of a second, each picture. If you see lots of pictures together, it makes it look as if it's moving. Right, I've brought along just a few Victorian toys to show you, just to give you a feel of the sort of things that rich Victorian children may have had to play with. I mean, of course, you know, they wouldn't have had television, they wouldn't have had DVDs and computer games and things like that. So we're just going to have a look at the types of things that they did have. I want to show you one of my favourite Victorian toys. This actually belonged to a little girl who lived in Ventnor on the Isle of Wight, so it's nice because it's a local toy. And yeah, you can see a wooden owl. I'm sure you know what to do to make him move, don't you? There we are. So he flaps his wings, but he doesn't just flap his wings, does he? He actually moves his ears and his beak as well. He's got his wings stuck. Now another one that I think is amazing is this one, because he is more than 100 years old, but he's actually made of cardboard, and he still works as well. Can you see what he's doing? He climbs up the string. Very, very simple, but he does move and he does work. It's just jointed, you can see. Just, oops. There we are. There we go. Do you know how to get a spinning top to go? Would you like to see if you can spin that one? There we are. That one's not a Victorian one. Oh, you're very good. You must be practised at it, I think. But this one's actually a Victorian one, and it's beautifully made. But they loved spinning tops. They're very, very popular. And sometimes they used to put little coloured discs on the top, and it meant that you could sort of learn about colour mixing, because Victorians liked the toys to be sort of a bit scientific as well as just having fun. So you could watch the colours mix and learn a bit of science as well about your colours.
Princess Beatrice, oh, she was the last of the Queen's 9 children. She brought some real gaiety into the family. So graceful, they call her the little butterfly. She's the baby of the family and they all adore her. There are stories. The Queen said at lunch, "Baby mustn't have that, it's not good for her." And little Beatrice replies, "But she likes it, my dear." And later in our poor Prince Consort's life, when we tells her what to do, the little princess says, No, I have no time, I must write letters." Poor little mite, just 4 years old when her father died.
When Prince Albert dies of typhoid, Queen Victoria retreats in grief to the Isle of Wight. Later, when Princess Beatrice is 24, she's still unmarried and a helper and companion to the Queen. She falls in love with Prince Henry of Battenberg, and when the Queen finds out about it, she is not at all amused. Determined to keep Beatrice by her side, and not really approving of the Battenbergs anyway, she's got to be persuaded to this union. But Henry's an amiable kind of guy, and he says, "Well, I'll come and live at Osborne," and he does.
Agreement! And it's a white wedding, and a favourite day of the year for summer brides, the 23rd of July. The bride was dressed in white satin, trimmed with the Honiton lace that Victoria herself had worn on her own wedding day. Victoria dies in 1901.
When I married in 1953, I came to live in this castle, from an ordinary house to live in this large medieval castle. My husband was the curator of the museum. Someone who, of course, who had lived here before us and fairly recently was Princess Beatrice, Queen Victoria's youngest daughter, and she used this building as really her summer home. She was a very much loved governor. She was very musical, like her father. And for her 80th birthday, the Isle of Wight gave her a very special present, and that was the 16th century organ, which is still in the museum.
After 2 world wars, the castle becomes the setting for celebration.
I think the tattoo was to celebrate the armed forces of this country, and at the same time bring something to the island that they wouldn't normally see, and also to provide some money for various local charities. And I think we succeeded on the whole rather well in that.
I said, "I'm going to call it Carisbrooke Castle tattoo." She says, "Very nice."
I said, well, I can't do anything else, I said, because here it is.
Earl Mountbatten, who was of course the governor of the Isle of Wight at that time, took the salute on the final performance of the 1969 and 1970 tattoos. It wasn't as big as the Aldershot tattoo or the Edinburgh Festival tattoo, neither did it attract as many people, but it was, by today's standard, a major tattoo.
Not since the days of George II has a royal leader led us into battle with a cry of, "Follow me!" Nowadays, our great leaders are more likely to slap the troops on the back and say, "We're right behind you, lads." And castles are no longer the power bases that they once were. Without knowing where or when an attack will happen, underground bunkers are the new galleries of war, where administrators battle to save a way of life. No one will stand on these ramparts anymore, like the Normans once did, brandishing a sword and shouting, "I'm all powerful! Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough!" Rah! Over the centuries, Carisbrooke Castle has been a fortress, a prison, a palace and a home. And today it is still a setting for celebration. Within its walls, we've glimpsed some of the magic, the glamour and the romance. And we've seen some of the characters that have built it, besieged it and defended it. High above the keep, the heritage flag flies proudly and its gates are open so that you can see what a fitting monument it is to the past 1,000 years of British history.